Folks, as you're dropping in, we're going to wait a few minutes so everybody can get on before we'll get started, but just hold tight. We'll start momentarily, but you've come to the right place, and I know you will be blessed. We're going to give this another minute or so everybody gets to drop in, and then we'll get started. Well, folks, I think we'll get started. I think we've got a quorum here, and we're grateful that you've come back for another session, and I know you'll be blessed and thankful that you've come. I'm Bishop Peggy Johnson. This is the teaching session of the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference of the United Methodist Church in 2021. And assisting for this moment is our real-time captioner, Deb Cunningham, Amy Boddy, Joe Fielding, Lindsay Cotman, James Brown, our lay leader, Dave Koch, and our special guest for the day is Reverend Frederick Douglass Coe Jr., who I will be introducing momentarily. But earlier today, we had a report about our scholarships, and the tape didn't run like we had planned. And so before we get started with our presentation of the day, we'd like to show the full text or the full video of our scholarship presentation. We'll begin with the one you saw, and then it'll have the testimonies of the young people who have received the funds. So let's run that video now. I can't hear the audio. Can you have the audio on? I'll try that again.
Greetings, Bishop Johnson, delegates, and guests. I am Lenora Thompson, the chairperson of the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference's Scholarship Committee. Our committee meets 2 times a year, and during that time, we review applications and make awards for qualified students. We thank you for your generous support that you have been giving to us throughout the years. We ask that you continue to support us. You can either send a check payable to Eastern Pennsylvania Conference and in the memo section write scholarship, or you can go on the website and give electronically and indicate that it is for the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference Scholarship Committee. We thank you in advance for your support. This year, we are going to share with you 3 wonderful applicants, one who is a graduate and is no longer receiving support, but 2 that are continuing to receive support from the Scholarship Committee. Again, we thank you for your support.
Hi everyone, my name is Joshua Foster, and I want to take a moment to talk about how the EPA scholarship has impacted me in a great way. While I received the scholarship, my home church was James Memorial United Methodist Church in Germantown, Pennsylvania, but I received these scholarships between the years of 2012 and 2019 while I was studying in 2 different universities. I got my undergraduate degree as a Bachelor of Architecture at Columbia University in New York City, and then I moved out to Los Angeles and got my Master's of Architecture degree along with the Real Estate Development Certificate at the University of Southern California. Being able to receive these funds and this scholarship was really impactful to me because it allowed me to be able to focus more on my studies instead of worrying about where I was going to get the money for my books, for my lab supplies, for my studio supplies, and the expensive software that it takes to go through the architecture program. It really allowed me to focus on my studies and catapult into my career that I'm in right now. Currently, I'm an architectural designer in Los Angeles where I focus on affordable housing and other market rate multifamily housing projects. I'm also on the board of the Southern California chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects, as well as a co-chair on the AIA Los Angeles chapter of the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. Outside of that, I also work at my local high school out here in Long Beach where I'm a high school football coach, as well as I'm involved in the local church where I play the electric bass and sing on the worship team. So I'm very thankful for the scholarship and for how it impacted me and allowed me to be able to get to where I am today.
Hi everyone, my name is Susan Jacob. I would like to take this moment to thank you for the scholarship that I received from the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference. Currently, I'm completing a master's in clinical service operations from Harvard Medical School, and I will be graduating this spring. Having grown up in the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference, I have fond memories of attending the annual conferences and serving on the media team and being a part of the Youth and Young Adult Council. During this pandemic, I am able to attend services at my father's church at Lincoln Park or my sister's church in the Seattle area. Because of the scholarship, I'm able to alleviate some of my financial needs. With my master's degree, I hope to work in healthcare leadership and ensure that all of our patients receive the very best care. I currently live in the Boston area and hope to continue serving the communities through the training I have received. Thank you for your support and encouragement.
Hello, my name is Ashley McKenna, and I am currently a sophomore at the University of Tampa. I'm a member of the Chatham Methodist Church in Chatham, PA, and I first received my scholarship going into my freshman year of college in 2019, and I've been able to renew it ever since. So right now I'm a sophomore, but I'm planning to graduate in the spring of 2022 with a major in biology and a minor in philosophy and environmental science. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who made this possible and for all of your generosity. It's really helped me to be able to pay for books and just take some of the stress off of moving across the country and trying to pursue a degree. So thank you all so much.
How wonderful, how wonderful. Scholarships make a big difference in the lives of our young people. And I'm sure Dr. Foster and Lorraine Foster, Reverend Lorraine Foster, are real proud of Joshua and Dr. Kurian and Christy Jacob, I'm sure, very proud of Susan and the McKenna family. Congratulations. This is such important work we're doing. Now at this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker of the day, the Reverend Frederick Douglass Coe Jr., PhD. He is a director of the Lewis Center for Church Leadership and the James C. Logan Professor of Evangelism, the E. Stanley Jones Professorship, and Professor of Urban Ministry at Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. He has also taught at St. Paul School of Theology in Kansas City area from 2004 to 2013, and has served congregations as the theologian in residence, associate pastor, and director of Christian education. Dr. Powe is a clergy member of the Baltimore-Washington Conference, my home conference, and certainly I've heard Dr. Powe speak. He came to the Peninsula Delaware Conference a few years ago and gave a really very important talk and helped our pastors see a vision for evangelism that we need so much now, like we've never needed before. And so I know you will be blessed. Following this video, he made a video presentation. Then we'll be back live again and you can ask questions. But what I want to say is, while you're listening to this presentation, a question might pop in your mind. Don't wait for it to be over. Just type them in now at the Q&A, not the chat, put the questions in Q&A, and then we'll line them up. And then when the video is over, Joe will read the questions to Dr. Powe and he will answer them best he can. And of course, you can ask more questions too after the question and answer time starts, but I don't want to lose any time. So be sure to take advantage of, we have an expert among us, and this is work that we all need to be taking very seriously. So welcome, Dr. Powe. We appreciate so much your presence with us. And at this time, would you like to say a word before we roll the video?
I just wanted to say thank you for the invitation, Bishop, and I look forward to engaging through the question and answers.
All righty, well then we're good to go. And so we'll ask if Lindsay will show us the video.
Hello, I'm F. Douglass Coe. I'm the director of the Lewis Center and the James C. Logan Professor of Evangelism at Wesley Theological Seminary. I'm really excited to be with you today and appreciate Bishop Johnson inviting me. I will be focusing on my book, The Adept Church, Navigating Between a Rock and a Hard Place. As we come out of this pandemic and we see the light at the end of the tunnel, I am hopeful that I can share some ideas with you that will generate conversations about being more missional. We all have been challenged this past year, but now is the time for us to really focus on how we can be more vital. In the book, I begin with this text in Esther, chapter 4, verses 9 through 11. Let me read this text for you. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. Now, as you hear this text, you can really see the challenge before Esther. Esther's stuck between this news she's heard from Mordecai about her people being annihilated, but then she's in the royal court, but the king hasn't called her, and if she goes without being summoned, she could be put to death. Esther's stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'm sure in Esther's mind, her self-interest is coming and sort of rising to the forefront. There's some avoidance taking place. Can I avoid this issue and not have to deal with it? I think that's in part why she responds to Mordecai the way she does. It's this feeling of being stuck in the middle, and sometimes our congregations get that sense. They feel like they're stuck in the middle between different options and different choices. And the question is, how do we navigate successfully where we can make good decisions that will help us flourish as a congregation? Let me begin by describing sort of three different types of congregations, and I think it's helpful because it's not one size fits all. And these descriptions that I'm going to share with you come from my work with Howard Thurman and his book, The Meditative Moment. Howard Thurman has this part where he talks about individuals, and he talks about them as a swamp, reservoir, or canal. I've adapted these characteristics that Thurman uses to talk about individuals to share what this would look like for a congregation. And my question for you is, as you hear these descriptions, which one is your congregation? Which description best fits you? Let me say up front that a congregation probably does have a dominant characteristic, but certainly you can fit into all three categories. It may be you have a ministry that is more like a canal, but another ministry is definitely a swamp. So don't feel like everything has to fit into one category. You may be all over the spectrum as we talk about these descriptions. Let me begin by talking about a swamp. Now, when Thurman was writing, of course, a swamp was a bad thing. Some of you are familiar with movies like The Swamp Thing, where you have this creature that comes out that is not very pleasant to look at and basically wants to kill everything in its sight. So it's not a very sort of pleasant picture as we think about the Swamp Thing. This is sort of Thurman's framework for thinking about a swamp. A swamp is not a pleasant place. A swamp is a place where things go to die. And if we think about that characteristic for a congregation, it means that a swamp congregation is a congregation that is very insular or inward focused. That a swamp congregation is a congregation where the people have no connection with the outside. They're only interested in how to survive, how to maintain what they're doing. They're really not interested in other people coming in, and they're not interested in going out to meet other people. As we think about swamp congregations, in many cases, they feel like there are never enough resources, so they can't share with anybody else. Everything has to be maintained so that they can do what they need to do for themselves. As we think about a swamp congregation, in many cases, they are congregations that over the years are just starting to decay from the inside out. This description of a swamp congregation is fitting for a dominant characteristic, but it also may be fitting for a ministry. You may have a ministry that feels like a swamp congregation. So don't forget that it's not only a dominant characteristic, but it also describes a ministry characteristic. The next category is a reservoir. Now, a reservoir is different in that a reservoir actually has resources. If you think of a picture as you're driving down a highway of, sometimes you see this sort of like big ball thing in cities that holds water, so that's sort of a reservoir. It has resources available to give to others. And these resources can be very helpful, and these resources in many cases can help the city to maintain and do the work it needs in terms of water. The same is true for a reservoir congregation. Reservoir congregations are making some connections in the community. The challenge for reservoir congregations is the connections they are making often feel more like a social agency instead of necessarily a church. Reservoir congregations like to do things for people, but they don't like to do things with people. So they may have a food ministry or a clothing closet. And people may come to the food ministry or the clothing closet, but when they come, they treat them like their clients. They will give them the food, they'll give them the clothes, and then they basically wish them well as they go on their way. They're not engaging them as partners, and they certainly aren't seeing them as a part of their faith community. So reservoir congregations have resources, and they often will share some of these resources, but the way in which they share them, they come across more as a social agency than they do sort of a community of faith. People know I could go to Church X, and Church X will feed me on Wednesday, or I can go to Church Y, and on Friday, Church Y will provide these clothes for me. But they also realize those congregations have no interest in connecting with them spiritually or more than on sort of a surface level as a client. Is your congregation a reservoir congregation? Is that how you interact with the community? You are further ahead than a swamp congregation, but you still will be struggling because people will not see you as a place where ultimately they will feel like they want to take that journey for their life, their faith life. Our final description is of a canal. A canal is sort of an interesting body of water. A canal connects to sort of everything that comes in its path. So water flows in, water flows out of a canal, and a canal can carry small sort of ships, and it can carry huge barges. I mean, the beauty of a canal is that it's flowing in and out and it's carrying all different sizes of ships. And this is true for a congregation. It doesn't mean you have to be a large congregation to be a canal congregation. Small congregations can also be canals. The issue is, are you effectively connecting with the community? Are you willing to partner and reach out in ways that move beyond being a social agency or being completely insular like a swamp? This is what a canal does well. A canal is willing to try to impact the community, but a canal is willing for the community to also have an impact on them. And that is the huge difference. They're listening to what the community is saying. Take, for example, a church that's in a community that's thinking about how it can be helpful, and they say, wouldn't it be great if we put a playground in this community? But then as they start talking to the community, what they realize is there are already 3 playgrounds, so what is really needed is a place for seniors. Listening to the community helps them to partner in a way that they can actually do something that's going to make a difference in the community instead of just making a decision to do what they want to do. Canal congregations make those sort of connections and are making a big difference in their communities. There are some questions that I think are helpful as you look in the mirror and think about your congregation and think about your ministries. How many visitors do you see in an average month? Do you have 1, 2, 10, 15? And again, it's not all about the numbers, but if nobody is coming to visit your church, or you only have 1 or 2 visitors per year, that probably means that you're not doing a whole lot to make connections in the community. How many visitors return a second time or come again? And again, it's not about the numbers, but if they're coming and they're not feeling like they're welcome, or that you're treating them more like a client than you are somebody who can see this as a space where they can grow, this can be a problem. And how many people do you connect with in your community? And how are you making those connections? Think about these questions and think about them honestly. As you think about these, this will help you to think about, are you a swamp? Are you a reservoir? Or are you a canal? Which one of these best describes your congregation? So having done these descriptions from Howard Thurman, swamp, reservoir, canal, and the way that I've adapted them to talk about congregations, the challenge that many congregations face is, how can they be missional? How can congregations really flourish and try to take the next faithful step? A part of what I want to share is, it's unrealistic in most cases for a congregation to go from a swamp to a canal. And I know oftentimes you come to these sort of presentations and people share ideas and you go back fired up thinking, man, my church is going to be on fire and all these people are going to come. I want you to be fired up, but I also want to be realistic. What I want to say is, if you're a swamp congregation, the next faithful step is try to become a reservoir. If you're a reservoir, the next faithful step is trying to move toward becoming a canal. But the goal shouldn't be to go from having 5 people in your congregation to having 5,000 people. The goal is, if we start doing those missional practices that will help us to connect in the community, we can make a difference, and we're going to move more towards being a reservoir and hopefully maybe one day being a canal. So I'm going to try to help you to take the next faithful step. It's important to think about mission as we do this. Congregations often have creative missions like connecting, caring, and celebrating. And these missions help them to sort of order their work and help them to think about what is critically important, what they want to do. The challenge is, congregations often don't follow their own mission. Congregations make decisions that actually go against their mission, or they hold on to ministries for too long that are no longer serving a missional purpose. So the key is, as we do this work and as we think about what it means to be missional, we have to keep our eye on the mission and make sure that the mission still connects and relates to the work that we are doing. So I want to name that up front as a critical piece of what we need to do. to help you think about then how the mission connects to your decisions. That's the next piece that I think is critical. The title of the book is The Adept Church. And I define it in that way because I believe this idea of being adept is what is critically important about decision making. The sort of vision that I have, or the picture that I have in my mind, is of an aircraft carrier and a plane trying to land on an aircraft carrier. I've watched them do this before, but I'm always amazed at just how adept those pilots have to be to land an airplane on what has to look like this little dot in the water from where they are up in the sky. Think about what it takes to really do that and do it well. The truth of the matter is, I would hate to be the one who had to practice doing that the hundreds of times before you get it perfect. I can only imagine how challenging that may be. But as I think about that sort of picture of being adept, let me lay out for you sort of what I think is necessary to do that work for the pilot. And I think this carries over into how I would define being adept. You have to have skill. You have to have precision. You have to be nimble. You have to have awareness, and it takes collaboration. All of these things are necessary for the pilot to be able to successfully land an aircraft on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the water. And I believe that this is also what is necessary for great decision making. Let me share, and I'm not going to read it in this case, but let me tell you the story in Luke 13, 10 through 17. In this story, you'll remember that Jesus is in the temple, and Jesus is teaching, and this woman, she's unnamed, comes up to him, and she has an infirmity. And Jesus basically says to her that you will be made whole. And when Jesus does this, there are those who become upset with Jesus and say, hey, listen, Jesus, you know, we have 6 days where you can heal people and do these things, but this is the Sabbath. We don't do that sort of thing on the Sabbath day. Jesus responds to them and says, you hypocrites, don't you untie your ox and give him water to drink on the Sabbath? Shouldn't this woman who has been held out of the community be also made free so that she, who is a daughter of Abraham, can once again join the community? So Jesus is basically sort of trying to help them to see things differently, navigating between a rock and a hard place in a way that he is making the decision to heal this child of Abraham, or we would say child of God. So let me just walk through why I think that Jesus is adept in the way that he goes about this. The first is, certainly Jesus has skills. I'm sure none of us are going to debate this, but in this case, Jesus is a respected teacher. People listen to him because he's a respected teacher, so that Jesus knows the law and understands it thoroughly. And this is critically important. He's not making it up. He has a deep understanding of the law. And this leads into the next point, precision. Jesus is really precise. Jesus understands that the debate is over the commandment of keeping the Sabbath holy. But the way he responds to the synagogue leaders is very precise, because he wants to sort of reshape the way they think about what it means to keep the Sabbath holy. And he does this because he points out to them, you allow your livestock to drink on the Sabbath. So if that is an acceptable behavior, why would it not be acceptable for somebody who has suffered to be made whole on the Sabbath? So Jesus is very precise in what he is doing. Jesus is nimble. He's able to illustrate a broader understanding of holiness. He basically is saying holiness is not some ritualistic thing we do just because we should do it and people should just, on the Sabbath do nothing else. Jesus is arguing that it's covenantal, that we're making this covenant with God, and this covenant with God around holiness is about how we are to be in community with one another and how we are to be whole with one another. So Jesus is broadening the understanding of holiness in his description, and he's nimble in the way that he does this and points this out to those who are in the audience. Of course, there's a awareness, there's a cultural understanding, because certainly the people who are not a part of synagogue leaders have a vested interest in knowing that it is acceptable to be a part of the community and be made whole even on the Sabbath day, that I don't have to wait to become a part of the community. So Jesus has this sort of awareness of what has taken place within the situation or context. And finally, collaboration. Now, certainly this one is a little bit different for Jesus. Jesus doesn't need to collaborate in the way that we do, but in this case, still, the people in the audience are collaborating with him and are excited about what has taken place, because the community feels like they've been a part of having their minds expanded for what it means to keep the Sabbath holy. So collaboration does, in fact, take place. So as you think about what Jesus has done here with decision making, Jesus is adept in the way that he is navigating this sort of law by not doing away with the law. He's still upholding the importance of the law, but opening our minds to say, but the way we live this law out can be very different and can be a way for the community to actually flourish in a different manner. Let me leave you with some questions for thinking about what it would mean for you to be adept in your decision making. What is your strength in terms of a skill set? As you look at your congregation and you look at the makeup of your congregation, it's important as leaders to realize, number one, we can't have all the knowledge. We can't know everything. So what is important is to make sure you're surrounding yourself with individuals who have a different skill set and can supplement the decision-making process. That when you do this, it allows you to make better decisions. It's not you trying to figure everything out by yourself, but you really are getting the input from the entire community. How can you use precision to shape and reshape decisions? Oftentimes when we make decisions, we start going down a path that takes us away from what the issue is at hand. And when we do this, we end up then typically moving away from the actual point that we're trying to resolve. What Jesus did in the story is Jesus was very precise about what it is that he was debating and what it is that he was illustrating to the synagogue leaders. When we are making decisions, you have to be adept enough to be precise, to make sure you're actually resolving the issue and that you are not trying to go down paths that are going to lead you astray and into something else. How do you communicate an openness to being nimble, but keep the mission in mind? Now, this is critically important because it's easy to get trapped where you want to just hold onto the law so strongly so that you feel like everybody's on the same page. But when you do that, you can sort of squelch creativity. But you don't want to be so open and so easygoing and laid back that anything goes, because then people aren't on the same page and you can have folk doing all kind of different things, and that's not helpful at all. So the key is to be nimble. The key is to help people to understand that boundaries are there to help us to be in the same page and to help us to move in the same direction. But boundaries shouldn't be constraining, that we have to be nimble enough to think outside of the box and sometimes to think about ways we can move that would help us flourish that may not fit into our preconceived ideas. So being nimble in a way where you don't lose sight of boundaries, but you don't let those boundaries constrain you, are critically important. Then the question is, how are you continuously building contextual awareness in your congregation and community? Too often in our congregations, our contextual awareness is just for the congregation itself. This is the big challenge swamp congregations have. Swamp congregations can tell you everything about who they are, who the members are, and how they're friendly with one another. But if you ask them a question about something in the community, they, in most cases, have no clue. What is key is not only having contextual awareness about the congregation, but it's having contextual awareness about the community and knowing what has taken place, the challenges, sort of the assets, and all these different things that are in the community that can help a congregation to make those strong connections. Then the question is, how will you collaborate with insiders and outsiders? Once again, in many congregations, when we do decision making, to go back to my playground example from earlier, we sit in a committee inside of the church and we make a decision we're going to build a playground. We don't talk to anybody else. We build the playground and then we wonder why nobody comes and plays on it. If we had taken the time to actually go talk to the people in the community, what we would have discovered is what was needed was something for seniors, not something for children. So when we do things, we need to collaborate not only with those inside, but with outsiders. They're going to bring a different perspective, a perspective that's going to help us to make a better decision. If you're going to be adept in your decision making, which is going to help you to move from a swamp to a reservoir, from a reservoir to a canal, then it's important to remember that you have to have a strong skill set, and that's going to take more than you. That you're going to have to be precise, you're going to have to be nimble, you're going to have to be aware, and you're going to have to collaborate. All of these are critically important to be a missional congregation and into flourishing. Having sort of described the characteristics of congregations and having talked about the importance of adept decision making, it's now important for us to think about those missional characteristics that are going to help us to actually practice and do the work of moving from a swamp to a reservoir or a reservoir to a canal. Let me first sort of lay out for you the 4 missional characteristics, and certainly there are more that I talk about in the book. The first is contextual. The theological term for this would be incarnational, but we'll talk about it as being contextual. The second is communal, and here I talk about theologically sacramental, but again, the term is communal. The third is innovative. The theological term would be creational, and the fourth is visionary, and the theological term would be eschatological. I'm going to go through these 4 and help you to sort of understand how these practices can help your congregations to think about where you are and then maybe think about how you can move to a different place. So having described those 4, let me begin with contextual. And as I begin with contextual, let me read one of my favorite scripture passages from the Message, John 1:14a. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. I just love that imagery of moving into the neighborhood. You can literally sort of see something taking root in the community, that someone comes in and buys a house and meets their neighbors, and you can really see it taking shape. So you can see this importance of context. As we think about context, one of the things that is key, and this is nothing new, is that you have to be contextually relevant. Too many congregations today, whether they're urban, suburban, or rural, as the community changes, they stop being relevant to the community. Oftentimes, and this is a swamp mentality, people remember the good old days when everybody looked like them and everybody knew each other. Now, of course, the argument is, well, our neighbors don't want to know us, but have you tried to know the neighbors? You have to be contextually relevant and continue to make those connections. This means you got to know your context well. This requires getting outside of the doors and meeting people, meeting the different businesses, having those conversations. This is a part of what is key to being sort of contextually relevant. And we can't be afraid of connecting with people. We can't be afraid of someone who may look different from us or someone who may be different from us. It's important to make all these connections. When we do that, we're building assets. And it doesn't mean they necessarily are going to join your church, but you never know when you may form an important partnership or when they may actually join the church. The key to being contextual is a congregation should always be touching the lives of others and allowing others to touch them. This is what it means to be contextual. Let's think about the categories that I shared with you, beginning with a swamp. In most cases, a swamp is not becoming flesh and blood in a community. In fact, what's happening is the exact opposite. A swamp is basically returning to dust. They're decaying. They're not making any connections. A swamp, in many cases, congregation, they may collect money for a Thanksgiving basket or a Christmas basket, and that's it. That's as far as they'll go in terms of community connections. They feel good about what they've done because they're giving something to somebody, but the reality is, in many cases, they don't even know who the basket is going to, and they have no real connection to what has taken place beyond simply giving a little bit of money. Then as we think about a reservoir, the community actually knows this church exists. It has some flesh and blood in its veins because they are making some connections, because often they will have the clothing closet or they'll have the soup kitchen. The challenge here is they're treating the people like clients. So the people may come on a Saturday, the people may come on a Wednesday, but that's it, and they're only coming for goods. They're a distributor of goods. They're not actually connecting with them in a way that they are making a difference in their spiritual journey. They're only providing goods for them so that they can make it to that next week. We have to be careful that we're going beyond just simply providing goods for individuals. And finally, there's a canal. A canal congregation is actually willing to be that connector. They're willing to connect with individuals at a level where they're trying to make a difference in the lives of those individuals, but also allowing those individuals to shape their lives. So in the case of a food ministry, a canal congregation oftentimes invites those in the community to prepare the meal with them so that it becomes a true communal effort, and that they're doing this work together. It's not perceived as something we do for you, but it's something we do together and we share in together as in a family. This is a very different way of thinking about doing ministry than doing something for people. So context is critically important. And the key is, as you heard these descriptions, think about where your congregation is and how, if you are a swamp, what step can you take to be a reservoir? If you're a reservoir, what step you could take to become a canal? The next thing we need to talk about is communal. We all participate in several communities. I'm a part of a church community, a work community. Your children may be in different organizations like soccer, basketball, so you have a community there. So you could be in several communities at the same time. And in these communities, stories shape them. Stories are what hold them together. If your son or daughter plays soccer, you can remember the game where they saved the winning goal. You can remember the game where they made that wonderful pass, and stories start to shape. Some of them, of course, over time get a bit elaborated to the point where they're not completely true, but they're still fun to tell. But stories are also critical in our Christian community. It's the narrative that helps to shape us and to pull us together. And what is critically important in the Christian community is the narrative of baptism and of communion. This is the story that brings us into the community, and it's the story that feeds us while we're in the community. It's the story that shapes who we are. If you think about baptism is what brings us in. It makes us a part of not only the Christian community as a whole, but makes us a part of a particular congregation that says we're going to shape and form you as you take this journey. And in communion, we're being fed the bread and the body of Christ and the blood for the health of Christ as we live out our salvation. And we're not supposed to take this for ourselves, but we take this so that we can share it with others. This is the story that we're called to live out. As we think about this, then we have to think about, again, a swamp congregation. In most swamp congregations, the story of the community becomes rote. If you think about communion, if you do it one time a month, you just do it because you do it one time a month. It has no meaning beyond the fact that every first Sunday I know I'm supposed to go take communion, and that's what I expect to happen. But beyond taking it, it has no impact on my life, and I don't expect my life then to impact anybody else. So the story is losing its meaning. We no longer have a narrative that's alive, but the narrative itself is becoming dead. In a reservoir congregation, it's a mixed bag. You have some people who are rote, just like they are in a swamp congregation, but you do have people who see the narrative as important. And oftentimes this is a small group of individuals that are trying to be missional and trying to move the congregation forward to do new things. They're trying to take this narrative and say, hey, look at all these opportunities and the things that we can do. So for them, communion is a part of the narrative where they want to go share the bread of the world with others and help to make those connections. But oftentimes they feel like they're being pulled back by the other members in their congregation as they do this work. So the good news is they're not a swamp congregation where it's all rote, but it's still not a canal where many of the people still aren't with them in terms of the importance of connecting with others. In a canal congregation, it's different. Here, the story and the narrative is alive. It's being lived out. That when you take communion, you're taking it not simply for yourself, but you're taking it because you're excited about what this means in terms of the work you're about to do. That you're going to go and share what you just experienced with other people. You're excited to make these connections into communities with others. You're excited to invite others to go on this journey with you. Canal congregations want to constantly live out the narrative in new ways, invite people in the community in new and different ways. When you're a canal congregation, it's important to keep the narrative alive and keep it moving so that the congregation doesn't start to sort of fall backwards, becoming a reservoir and possibly even eventually a swamp. So we want to make sure that as we think of our communal narrative, it's one that we're living and one that is not dead. Innovation. Innovation is critically important. But as we think about innovation or being entrepreneurial, oftentimes what we think is, I've got to come up with something brand new that no one's ever done before. Or I've got to create this wonderful thing that it's going to be so exciting that people are just going to be wowed by it. The reality is, innovation often comes when we borrow from something that is old and think about how we can do it in a different way. It doesn't have to be something brand new. It doesn't have to be something that wows people. It has to be something that helps us to think outside of the box that we're stuck in. When we think about innovation in this way, what it means is, instead of thinking about having a small group at the church and you have families that are coming home from work and school and it's hard for them to get there, it may be that the small groups take the form of house small groups where people are able to gather around a meal and the children may be able to still do their homework while the adults do a Bible study or something. So it's not taking something and making brand new or a wow factor, but it's taking something that could be very traditional and thinking about how do we use it in such a way that we're going to be able to do something different, seeking different opportunities. The challenge is, as again we think of these categories, if you think of a swamp congregation, usually there's no innovation. They don't want to take any risk. They're risk averse. They're happy with the way they are. They're happy to survive. The goal is if we just get a preacher that can preach my funeral, we're going to be okay. They literally are happy to die. Now, Reservoir congregation is different, and we're happy about that. Reservoir congregations are looking for opportunities. They are looking for ways to do some different things. The key with a Reservoir congregation is they want people to come to them. I want to be innovative, but I want them to come to my building. I want them to come to my property. I want them to come to me. So Reservoir congregations do have some innovation, but they're still trying to get people to come to them. Canal congregations, on the other hand, are willing to go to the people. They don't need people to come to them. If we can have a dance ministry at the dance studio down the street, let's do it. If we can have this ministry at the restaurant down the street, let's do it. So it's not necessary for the people to come to us. We want to find innovative ways to go out in the community and work together where we can do new and creative things. So innovation is critically important, but it doesn't have to be innovation where you wow people, but it does need to be innovation where you're willing to connect, where you're willing to do something different, and you're willing to get outside of your congregation. And finally, visionary. As we think of visionary, we think often of this lone person that God gives the vision to, and everybody follows this lone person. The truth of the matter is that vision often comes to a community through several people, not just one individual. So it's critically important not to think of just one individual as the visionary, but think of the community as the whole owning the vision. The vision is what helps us to follow our mission. The vision is what helps us to be able to do the work we've been called to do. In a swamp congregation, there is no real vision beyond survival. That's why they struggle so much. The goal literally is to have somebody preach at their funeral. That's the vision for the church. That vision only can lead to decaying. The focus on what they used to be and what they used to do, not on the possibilities that are before them. So swamp congregations are always thinking about the past. They're living in the past. There is no vision for how to move forward to the future. Reservoir congregations sometimes will have a vision, but again, the vision is about their building. The vision is, how do we get more people in our Sunday school class? How do we get more people in our worship service? The key is to get individuals to come into their building. The vision focuses on people coming to them, but not them going out and connecting with the people. And finally, a canal congregation is a congregation that sees the vision as the possibility of doing something different, of them being able to go out and actually touch the lives of others. Why don't we move our Christmas Eve service from our sanctuary to that community center where it would allow us to connect with some families that are different than our own? A swamp congregation would never do this because they would be afraid of the 1 or 2 families that come every year that they wouldn't be able to find them, not realizing they might be able to connect with 15 or 20 families at the community center. Canal congregations have a vision that moves them not only outside of their building, but a vision of partnering with others in the community to make a real difference. So it's important for congregations to have this vision. Missional congregations have to, number one, make sure that they're contextual, that they're communal, that they're innovative, and that they have a vision. When they do these things, then they have the possibility of moving from a swamp to a reservoir, or from a reservoir to a canal. As you think about being stuck between a rock and a hard place, as you think about the decisions that you're making for your congregation, think about how you can practice 1 or maybe 2 of these characteristics differently. Think about, can you create a vision for getting outside of your building? Can you start to live your narrative differently? This will help you to take that next faithful step. This will help you to become an adept church.
Wonderful, wonderful. Lots of good food for thought here. Trying to get myself going here. I don't know why I can't get my face back up. There we go. Thank you, Dr. Powe. What a very practical, clear as a vision. And we want to hear the title of that book again. But let me just say before we start on the questions that this video will be posted on our website, as will all of the videos that you saw earlier today. They'll all be there in little chunks if you want to pull down certain ones to show. But I know that every church could appreciate hearing this lecture because it's so practical. It works for our urban churches, our rural churches, every church. And it is what it means to be a Christian. It's what it really means to be the church of right now. So thank you so much. Very, very helpful words. And so at this time, well, one more time, tell us the name of that book.
The book is The Adept Church, Navigating Between a Rock and a Hard Place. And of course, you can get it through Cokesbury or on Amazon. So The Adept Church, Navigating Between a Rock and a Hard Place.
Okay, everybody ought to buy this book. I think it is a go-to book for lots of good practical stuff to move us forward. Okay, well, Joe, we know we have some questions in the Q&A. So what have you got for us?
Okay, some of these questions were asked early on, so because we had them thinking ahead of time, so you may have answered them, but I'll ask them anyway. I know that my church is a swamp because we do not connect to the community because we have no youth. Older people are not in our geographic area. Tell us how to do this.
All right, I'm going to make sure I'm understanding. They have no youth, and they're saying there are also no older people in the area?
I believe that's what they were saying. It's there were some typos, so I'm not exactly sure, but it looks as though they're saying no youth and maybe the geographic, no older people in their geographic area.
This is, I mean, if there are no youth in the congregation, that is not unusual. It would be more unusual if there were no older people in the area, but then I'm hoping that there are children and other young adults in the area. So the question then becomes, how can they connect with those individuals that are in their community? Mm-hmm. And in this case, if they are a swamp, like I say, the goal would not be to be a canal, but it would be starting with a simple step of, it may be having a sort of trunk or treat at Halloween time to invite the children and youth to connect with the church, or a back to school program where they are again giving away backpacks or something to invite children and youth to connect with the church. So in this case, the thought is you do want to try and make that first step of getting people to come to the congregation and make that connection, and finding sort of one outreach effort that can help you to do that. So it's sort of just taking a small step as your initial step forward.
Thank you. Is there a checklist in your book?
There's not a checklist in terms of you go straight down the line. There is questions that help you to discern. And as you heard me sort of talking about the missional characteristics, there you get sort of a checklist of, my church would fit in this category based upon I'm fulfilling this missional characteristic, or my ministry is doing this missional characteristic in this way. So the checklist does exist. If I'm a church that is trying to attract people to come to my feeding ministry, you know that I'm a reservoir congregation in that way. I'm a congregation that does not want to do any ministry beyond sort of paying for a food basket. You know that you're a swamp congregation in that way. So a checklist does exist in that manner.
Prior to pandemic, our monthly community meal fed about 100 people. I started to do mini sermons and prayer time to feed them spiritually. We had to move it to a drive-through, but I still go up to each car and connect with them. Do you have any advice moving forward to keep this third church family fed?
First, I want to say what wonderful work in ministry has taken place. And just a couple of ideas, and you may have already thought of these. The first is think about inviting these individuals to some sort of community meal. Of course, they may not all come, but the idea would be to be able to get to know them better and to build relationships. And since you're already working with a food ministry, a community meal would be sort of a natural step. The other is, a lot of congregations have done this particular thing and it's been helpful, is to invite some of the individuals that are coming to actually volunteer in the work that you're doing. So when they volunteer, again, it's an opportunity to build a deeper relationship with them and to get to know them better. And that's what you're trying to do, is to really build those sort of authentic relationships. And of course, and this one you're probably already doing, it sounds like, is asking them, what can you pray for them, and actually praying for them and letting them know that you have prayed for them that next week, so that you can continue that dialogue with them.
We know that multicultural churches in the denomination are growing. However, sadly, many of our churches remain homogeneous in terms of demographics. What do you believe are some starting points for churches to become more connected with the multicultural communities and people in their neighborhoods?
A couple of different things. Of course, depending where your church is located, this could be easier or more challenging. But if you are in a diverse area and you're trying for your church to become more diverse, what is critically important is for that to be reflected in the leadership and the ministries of the church. So when individuals come to the church, who do they see? So if they're only seeing one thing, that means then what you have to do is work to get individuals that may collaborate with you so they can start seeing diversity. And when individuals see that diversity, then it's going to be easier for individuals to buy into that you are moving towards a sort of more multi-ethnic or multicultural ministry, depending on the efforts that you're doing. But the key is that being reflected in who other individuals see. When you will say you want to do something, but people are seeing something else, their eyes are going to go with what they see and not necessarily what it is that you're saying. So the work is in creating a diversity in what people see.
What tools do you recommend that will help a congregation do the work of looking at what kind of a congregation they are? Everybody will say they are a canal church, like they say they are warm and friendly, but the reality may be harder to face.
That is absolutely true. I have never met a church that did not say we were the friendliest church. In the book, I actually talk about congregations that think more highly of themselves and congregations that think more lowly of themselves. And I help congregations then to do the hard work of saying what you really have to do is be honest and take a hard look in the mirror, because there's a danger, of course, if you think too highly of yourself, but there's also a danger in thinking too lowly of yourself, and you want to avoid those extremes. What you want to do is be honest so that you can take the next faithful step. One thing that some congregations have also done is to get a third party that is not a part of the congregation to help them go through, who doesn't have a vested interest, to sort of be the person that says, well, wait a minute, are you being honest here, or are you trying to really elevate who you are? So sometimes that sort of third party who may not have a vested interest can also help the congregation to make sure they stay on the right track and be accountable.
How can the laity lead in inciting change?
Laity are critical, particularly in our system. The pastor is appointed for 1 year. The laity are the individuals who are going to be there day in and day out. So for the laity to take seriously the work of wanting to make sure that their ministries are, moving from swamp to reservoir, reservoir to canal, and then the congregation as a whole is making this shift is important. So a couple of things that laity can do. One is think about the decision-making process that I talked about. And the one that most congregations struggle with is evaluation. We start ministries and a ministry may go well for a while, but after a while it may start to tail off, but we have never evaluated, or we don't evaluate each year what is going on in the ministry. So the laity can play a critical piece to make sure that even if pastors are changing, they're doing the work of evaluation. They're making sure the ministry is fitting the mission that they're trying to accomplish as a congregation. So the laity can make sure they're holding themselves accountable, and then the pastor accountable to that the work they're doing is fitting with the mission that the congregation has named for itself.
These two sort of go together. What are practical steps that canal-minded people in a reservoir congregation can take to move the congregation as a whole to a canal congregation? How do they build how do they build relationships with outsiders in the community to determine where the Spirit of God is leading, and then introduce those voices to the congregation? And also, how do you keep up the spirits of the few who are moving from a reservoir to a canal when so many are still stuck in the swamp?
All right, a lot of questions, so you have to help me if I miss pieces of it. I think a couple of things, and this is pieces of our common question. There are always a few people who sort of have a canal mentality, but many of the congregation aren't ready to move forward with them at that point in time. But almost all transformation takes place with a few people starting that effort. So it's getting those individuals who do have the canal mentality together, because one, they can encourage each other, and two, they are the ones who can actually start the process of transformation. So I would say, if you have 2 or 3 people, and the Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered, there's Jesus. If you have 2 or 3 people, they should gather and they should go ahead and start the work of the transformation for the congregation. Having said that, then the second piece is, as they are thinking about this transformation, they can think about what would be an easy collaboration that we can start that the congregation would support. So if the congregation is already doing, let's say, a feeding ministry, it may be that you collaborate with the community center and say, hey, they would love for us to come once a month and feed the children that are coming for this particular event. So that becomes a way to get the congregation to move out into a different space, and one that the congregation can buy into. So it's finding those collaborations that the congregation can support, that don't seem really far-fetched, that can help them take the baby steps to move forward. It's hard work, but it's work that can take place. Just to give another example of that, in my congregation in Kansas City, we wanted to start a very different service, but knew that it would be hard for the congregation to buy into this. The one thing that we knew for a fact is that there would be a lot of pushback. So we came up with the idea of starting the service during football season, because most of the people in Kansas City love the Chiefs, and most of our congregation either went to the football game or they would miss church so they could watch the football game. I'm still not certain why they missed church, but that's a story for a different day. So the congregation agreed to let us start an 8 a.m. service, because it would allow them to come to a worship experience and still have time to either go to the game or to watch the game. And we agreed that at the end of the football season, we would reevaluate and ask them if they wanted to continue it. But they bought into it because it had their vested interest at heart. So my point is when you're starting to think about doing something new, connect it to the vested interest of the congregation and you can get buy-in easier.
And just briefly, how can you keep up the morale of those who are canal-minded living in the swamp?
That, of course, is tougher, but the way to do so is, one, hopefully you're going to find at least one more canal-minded person so that you can encourage each other. But two is go ahead and start building connections with people outside of the church that may not immediately have an impact, but then at some point in time, as you start finding those places where you can have will have an impact, so that you can keep your morale high. And it may be connecting with your barista at a coffee shop. It may be connecting with someone else that that you can have conversations with, that at some point in time you can finally get the congregation to see, hey, here's an opportunity for us to do something new. So it's finding those places where you can encourage yourself and stay encouraged even as you're doing the tough work in a challenging situation.
Are there spiritual exercises you might recommend to facilitate transformation from one level to the other?
I like Lectio Divina. I think it's really helpful in terms of reading scripture, hearing scripture differently, and can help people discern. So I think that's critically important. Certainly, for some individuals, fasting is critical, and it can again help them to discern well. Prayer not only in terms of the individual, but having corporate prayer where people are praying together around a text and listening to how God is speaking to them as they sort of are reflecting upon that text. And oftentimes what we find is that God is giving people the same vision as they reflect upon that. So I think those disciplines are easy. I'm very Wesleyan, so I think sort of Wesley's works of piety are a great starting place for those sort of spiritual disciplines.
We are an inner city church in the midst of many churches. What are some innovative ideas? We have to constantly compete with other churches. How do we navigate our ministries?
A couple of things. One is really thinking about the unique identity of your congregation. So even though there are sort of many churches around you, think about it in terms of surprisingly enough, restaurants like to go next to other restaurants. So you could have a McDonald's, a Wendy's, and a Burger King all right next to one another. And while they all serve hamburgers, they all still have their unique sort of contribution to make of why people choose that particular restaurant. Now, I'm not calling a church a restaurant, but the key is thinking about your unique identity in the community. Your unique identity may be that we do a really good vacation Bible school. So build off of the vacation Bible school and start thinking about how are other ways that we can connect with children. It may be that we're really good with senior adults. So think about what are other ways then we could connect with senior adults. So try to shift the way you think about it, of not sort of competing in general with the other churches, but think about what is our unique contribution we can make to the community, and let's play to our strength in that way and really focus on that ministry.
I believe my church is a canal church, but my ministries are swamps. Is it possible to turn the caring of our congregation, particularly the caring of the elderly, into more of a reservoir or a canal, or is this okay?
I'm going to answer the second part, which I think relates to first. I think that you can alter the caring to be caring for others. I mean, the hope is that the congregation, if it has this love that they're sharing with one another, that love can also be expressed towards others if they see the importance of making that connection. So I think the work there is helping the congregation to understand the same sort of care they're taking with one another, how that can have a transformational impact as they think about the ministries they're doing and connecting with somebody else. I do think that it is important to do that because at a certain point in time, that if your congregation is inwardly focused, the congregation itself is going to start moving towards a swamp. So you want to try to really work on them not being inwardly focused on the ministries also.
Thank you. How do you approach people in church who are only concerned about getting bodies in the pews, not being futuristic?
This one is one of the toughest ones. And I'm always very honest and realistic. At a certain point, I mean, the question becomes, do they want the church to continue into the future? Or are they simply satisfied with the church is going to not exist when they die? So if they want the church to continue in the future, if they have a real interest in the church, you know, celebrating more anniversaries, then you have hope because you can talk to them about, we are going to have to change some things. But realistically, if they really could care less about the church celebrating anniversaries and they're really just concerned about the church being there for them, the good news is we are an Easter people, and as that congregation dies, there will be resurrection that will take place for other opportunities within that congregation.
Does the pastor play a big part in the church staying in one of the categories?
I think the pastor plays an important part, and that the pastor is the individual who is hopefully the one that can see the church in ways that others cannot. So they can sort of see the whole in ways that others cannot. And when that's the case, the pastor then has to be the one that is helping the congregation to sort of constantly be moving towards, you know, the next fateful step of being a reservoir, being a canal, trying to continue to be a canal. So the pastor plays a critical role in doing that because they're the ones who can sort of see the whole where everybody else is just seeing pieces of it. So their job is to try to make sure they're communicating with the others so that the vision is clear to these other individuals in ways that can help the congregation to keep moving forward. The hard part is that people can get so focused on their ministry, and this is particularly true of a reservoir. They do a wonderful feeding ministry, people are coming, and that becomes their sole focus, and they miss sort of the other things that are taking place. It's the pastor then that can sort of help expand their mind to say, this is wonderful, but let's think about who we're missing by not sort of thinking about if we expanded and took food just across the street to this apartment complex, what that could do to even help us to connect with more people. So the pastor plays an important role in sort of helping expand the minds of the people and always challenging them to keep moving forward.
Do you have insights particularly relevant to African-American churches and church culture in regard to these three types of congregations and how they might navigate their way through typical challenges in moving from swamp to canal?
First, I will say think about moving from swamp to reservoir instead of swamp to canal. You know, take sort of the first baby step. For African-American congregations, there are a couple of challenges. One, of course, depends on location. So many African-American congregations are located in transitional areas where the community is shifting and is no longer necessarily African American. So now you have to think about, who are we going to connect with? Are we going to continue to try to be strictly an African American congregation, or are we going to transition to try to become more multicultural? Some African American congregations are struggling because they're getting more mature, we'll say. So the people in the congregation, the average age keeps increasing, and they're seeing a decrease in younger people. So in this particular case, then the challenge becomes, how do we think about connecting with younger adults in a meaningful way? And again, thinking about what are places that we may need to do something different. So it may be that we have to think about a different worship opportunity that doesn't last as long as our traditional one, is more participatory, and does some other things. So part of it is really thinking about what is the particular challenge of this particular congregation, and then thinking about how do we then sort of address that particular challenge in a way that can help us make the connections we need to sort of move forward.
How can you help the canal-minded who are engaged outside the congregation to be more than engaged in a private ministry? How to incorporate what they're doing into the congregation and getting the congregation engaged?
It's critically important. Well, I'm going to back up. I will say that it's a two-way street. If you're engaged outside of the congregation, a true canal means that you're connecting the congregation. It's not a true canal if you don't have that sort of connecting and flow going. So it's really important for those individuals who are able to get out in the community to do the collaboration and make those connections, to make sure that they're bringing the congregation along with them. Now, sometimes, you know, the congregation is at a place where they may not be moving as quickly as some individuals are, but you still want to make sure that you are making sure the congregation is staying connected to the efforts that you're trying to do. Or at some point, what simply is going to happen is there's going to be frustration on the side of the canal-minded people. There's going to be frustration on the side of the congregation, and you're going to have a huge disconnect take place. So it's going to take some patience. It's going to take some effort to make sure you find the ways to make the right connections in the congregation. But it's absolutely critical that you make those connections, or it's going to end up where it's not going to be sort of impactful in terms of the congregation making a difference in the community.
How can our church reach out to younger families who are just trying to get by and they don't have a lot of time to meet?
A couple of things again, and in each situation, again, is different, but for many younger families, time is a critical issue. If you have two household or even single parents that are working, and then you're coming home and having to cook or fix dinner, you're having homework, and that doesn't even include other activities. So, I mean, these are days that are drawn out and logged, so that what happens then, of course, church just feels like one more add-on on top of everything else that is going on in their life. So what becomes important then are finding ways that are connecting, that aren't adding to sort of the weariness those families are experiencing. One of the programs, and I'm thinking they probably have some in your area, would be like Upward Sports. So for the younger children who are involved, Upward Sports is a Christian sports organization that can take place at congregations. So it's a way to make a connection where they would be playing sports anyway, but now they're doing it within a Christian organization. Another, if that is not an option, would be offering to host a meal at the church once a week to give relief to the parents who are cooking, so that becomes a way of connecting. So it's finding ways to sort of lessen the weariness that families are experiencing, so that as you build then the relationships, they see the church as something that's coming alongside of them, and not just one more add-on that is something that they are being asked to do.
Dr. Powe, many, many thank yous have come through, and much appreciation for all the insights and discussion that you have provided. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the invitation and the excellent questions.
Yeah, we got some sharp cookies in this conference and lots of canal work going on, and we can always keep moving on to perfection. But before we let you go, could you say a word about the Lewis Leadership Center and some of the things resources that the center has? Because I know that that's yet another gift you can share with us.
Absolutely. The Lewis Center has our website is churchleadership.com. So churchleadership.com. So it's an easy one to remember. And we offer a lot of free resources like our e-newsletter that comes out once a week. We also do a podcast that comes out about twice a month that is also free. So please make sure you sign up for those free resources. But then we also offer some studies that do cost money, but we have some Wesleyan Studies. We have a study by N.T. Wright on the Bible that is very popular that a lot of individuals use. For those who are interested in nature, we just created sort of a study of getting to know God in creation. So there are a lot of study opportunities also that are available on the website. And also on the website, we have other information, and some of this is free for sort of just understanding clergy taxes. We have financial resources in terms of if you're doing a campaign at your church, how do I do sort of a capital campaign? So all of those things are available on the website for people. So churchleadership.com, email or call if you have any questions, we'll be happy to help you.
Well, we appreciate this so much, and thank you again for being among us, and I hope the people here today will all buy the book and also show your video at their churches, because this could turn the conference upside down, and I appreciate it so much. Well, I'd like to close with a word of prayer, if that'd be all right. Did you have anything else you want to say?
I do not. Thank you, and thank you again for the invitation.
All right, let us pray, folks. Gracious God, we do thank you that you've been sitting here among us as we've been having conversation and thinking of possibilities and how our churches can reach out to more and more people and make a difference in this world because of the love of Jesus Christ that's in us through the Holy Spirit. So bless us as we engage in these ministries. Thank you for Dr. Powe's resourcing of us and all those who helped to make this day possible. And we pray all this now in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thanks be to God. Thank you all. God bless. I think we're good. Well, it was good. Bye.